Welcome. On behalf of the National Transit Institute, I thank you for participating in the Sustainable Public Transportation Environmentally Friendly Mobility TCRP International Transit Studies Program Spring 2011 Mission Webinar. The National Transit Institute develops, promotes, and delivers training and education programs for the public transportation industry in the United States. We are pleased to have Gwen Chisholm-Smith, Kevin Desmond, Clinton Bench, Heather Ferguson, and Mariate Echeverri as our speakers. I would like to turn the presentation over to Gwen Chisholm-Smith, Senior Program Officer at the Transit Cooperative Research Program. Gwen?
Yes, thank you, Judy, and I'd like to also add my greetings and welcome to the TCRP webinar series. Just to put this in context, the International Transit Studies Program is sponsored by the FTA. The Transportation Research Board serves as the program manager, and Catherine Harrington Hughes of Catherine Harrington Hughes and Associates serves as the mission coordinator. Our primary customers are transit operators. Now, the objective of this program is to broaden the professional development of U.S. transit managers by providing them with opportunities to visit transit systems abroad. It's our hope and also the objective of the program for our participants to return with insights and knowledge useful to their organizations, the transit industries, and their own personal transit career development and advancement. The program has actually been in existence since July 1992, and we've conducted upwards of 34 missions to date. In fact, the Spring 2011 mission was the 34th mission. Approximately 468 transit professionals have participated in these study missions. The missions are focused on all aspects and areas of transit. The mission participants have had the opportunity to meet with transport officials from Calgary, Canada, all the way to Cape Town, South Africa, and many points in between. The individuals who oversee the selection of the mission themes, the mission participants, and funding of this project is, in fact, it's just only one individual who oversees the selection of the mission themes, the mission participants, and funding of this project, and he is the chair of the International Transit Studies Oversight Committee. His name is Robert Prince, and he's vice president at AECOM Transportation. Now, more recently, due to the current sensitivity associated with international travel and the decrease in TCRP funding, the International Transit Study Program will go on a sort of hiatus from missions abroad for the next several months. However, the Project Oversight Committee will actively seek opportunities for U.S. public transit managers to engage with their international peers to discuss common concerns and challenges and to learn how transit systems in communities of various sizes and cultures are planned, funded, and operated. And you should know that all TCRP reports are available free of charge at www.tcrponline.org.
Thank you very much, Gwen. Our next presenter will be Kevin Desmond, Mission Team Leader and Webinar Moderator. Kevin is the General Manager of King County Metro Transit, which serves the Seattle metropolitan region, one of the largest transit systems in the country with annual ridership close to 120 million. Metro has pioneered an array of operations, fleet, technology, and market development initiatives over the years and has a long-standing commitment to progressive environmental policies and investments. Kevin is chair of the Sustainability Committee of the American Public Transportation Association. He holds a master's degree in public administration from the New York University.
Thank you, Judy, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone. It's still morning here in Seattle. It's a pleasure to get to host this chat and with the three great presenters from our mission. Gwen covered the International Transit Studies. I was actually privileged to be on the very first trip a long time ago as a staffer at the New York City Transit Authority, and now all these years later leading a trip focused on sustainability. And the focus on sustainability was very important to me as the chair of the Sustainability Committee within APTA. As was mentioned, this has become a very important element of APTA's mission, and in fact, we have a sustainability commitment. Some 100 public transit agencies and business members have signed on to that commitment to demonstrate how important it is as part of our ongoing day-to-day operations. And it was the lens through which we visited these 5 cities internationally. As was mentioned, it was in the spring 2011, seems like yesterday. We started our trip in Ahmedabad, India, a sprawling city in the western part of the country, moving on to New Delhi, the very bustling capital of the country. Moving on then into China, 3 rather different experiences in China. The Guangzhou with explosive growth and wealth, at least from what we could see in southern China. Moved on to Hangzhou, a smaller, older city. Smaller is, of course, a relative terms compared to U.S. cities. And then on to the massive world city of Shanghai. In each of those cases, we were hosted very well by the various different folks within the cities, and as you'll see from our 3 presenters, we learned quite a bit, saw quite a bit. Here's our team. At the very end of the presentation, there'll be a chart with the names of everybody, but it was a very diverse group of folks from throughout the United States, representing various different disciplines within our transit industry, from the legal side, our fleet maintenance side, planning side, general management side, you name it. We had folks who were able to ask really good questions of our hosts and the various presenters in the cities. And as a 2-time participant now in this program, I can say that the richness of our experience has a lot to do, of course, with who we're visiting and what we learn, but certainly it's also the interaction with the team members. It's a very intensive 2 weeks when we're together most of the time, and there's a lot of sharing and learning that we're able to accomplish during that time across our own experiences in the United States. My final slide to leave you with is this kind of image and picture of the 3 pillars of sustainability. And our mission was to examine these 5 cities from this perspective of sustainable growth, with a particular emphasis naturally on transportation and public transit development. So one would ask, well, why India, why China? What does that have to do with U.S. transit program development? What does that have to do with our interest in sustainability? Well, it has a lot to do with it, certainly. As everyone, I think, listening in on this webinar knows, that India and China are the 2 most populous nations in the world. And those 2 countries are deeply interested in and engaged in very rapid economic development. China, on its path, moving very rapidly, is becoming far more wealthy than even in the decade previous. And India wants to get there. India has a very strong desire to improve its economic development, improve the quality of life for its citizens. And of course, with that rapid economic development comes the potential for fairly significant environmental impacts. China is now the world's greatest emitter of greenhouse gases, surpassing now the United States. And with India, still a relatively poor country, wanting to improve the mobility and lot of its citizens, and they look to having a middle-class existence, middle-class from our lens at least. They want mobility. They want personal mobility. A lot of that means they want cars, or they want different ways to get around, and that, of course, can have dramatic, not only within their own countries, but worldwide environmental impacts. So I think we learned quite a bit from those cities in how they are managing their environmental sustainability, their social sustainability. How do they improve the lot of all members of their society in an equitable fashion, and of course their financial sustainability, the economy, the 3 pillars. And you can see from this image sort of how we thought about each of our presentations, how we reflected on our experience.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Our next presenter will be Clinton Bench. Clinton serves as Deputy Director of Planning for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. In that role, he oversees the Metropolitan Planning Program of Massachusetts' 13 MPOs and guides both strategic and project-oriented planning for MassDOT. His office recently launched Massachusetts' landmark Green Dot Initiative, which defines MassDOT's role in reducing statewide greenhouse gas emissions by 20% before 2020 and 80% by 2050. He also represents the MassDOT Secretary on the board of the Rose Kennedy Greenway Conservancy and as co-chair of the Governor's Commission on Community, Social Service, and Paratransit Transportation. Clinton received a BS in Civil Engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and an MS in Civil Engineering from the University of Massachusetts.
I am going to try and relate my comments as much as possible to the three pillars of sustainability that Kevin mentioned before: societal, environmental, and economic. That's certainly not to say that there isn't overlap, because there certainly is, as Kevin was saying on in his presentation and is shown in his Venn diagram. But what I'm going to talk about first here is just some general factors that are threatening sustainability across both the population and economic superpowers, you could call them, of China and India. The first one really is rapid economic development and urbanization. This is happening mostly because of residents and other folks that live in the countries shifting from jobs in the agricultural and craft industries to more service and industrial jobs as the economies progress. Of course, this then means that with more urbanized residents working in those kinds of industries, the distances that folks are traveling are farther as jobs are centralizing in work sites in business districts or in factories or in large office buildings, and therefore people who live in the cities are buying more cars and more motorbikes. Still, though, there's an enduring problem with poverty in both India and China. I'm going to start by talking about India, where nearly 30% of the urban population in Ahmedabad, for example, where we started our trip, are still living in what are generally called slums, or effectively makeshift neighborhoods of temporary dwellings that are either on public lands or otherwise on lands where they don't have the authority from the owners to be living. With these challenges, though, have come some pretty exciting successes in both India and China, which I suppose if they didn't have some great successes, we wouldn't be here doing this presentation. So hopefully some of the successes that got us excited will get some of the participants excited as well. We're going to hear more about the specific features of these successful new BRT systems, rapid transit and bike share systems in the following portions of the presentation, along with even some discussion about new technologies being used for bus propulsion. But for now, I'm going to focus on the framework within which the municipal and regional governments, in this case India, have been able to achieve success in ensuring the societal, environmental, and economic sustainability in the long run. In India, urban areas are growing faster than its population or economy is growing. So again, that rapid urbanization. In 2006, the country was 30% urbanized, but it's expected to grow to 60% before stabilizing. And what has been acknowledged in federal urban transportation policy is that this is potentially dampening, or indeed dampening, its national economic vitality. So there's a recognition that the cities are major engines of economic growth for the nation, that it's necessary to support integrated land use and transportation planning as part of the greater metropolitan planning process to ensure that travel distances are minimized, or at least that residents and visitors have options other than their new automobiles that they're buying more and more, or their motorbikes. And it was the National Urban Transportation Policy of 2006 that identified some of these policy statements that I'm going over now. That same National Urban Transportation Policy is very specific to talk about allocating road space equitably so that people, rather than vehicles, are really the focus of determining how transportation facilities are going to be rebuilt. At the same time also, this National Urban Transportation Policy is investing in motive power retrofits. You can start to see some of these environmental sustainability related statements in the National Urban Transportation Policy. And you can also see a lot of the social values stated in that urban transportation policy, as they have specifically designated a number of universities around the country. They've 4 of them so far that they're calling centers of excellence for technical and institutional support in developing new public transportation systems. In the slide here, you can see the group from the program meeting with students at the Center for Environmental Planning and Technology University, CEPT University, which happens to be located in Ahmedabad, which is the first city we visited. So this is the way I'm going to handle the China discussion as well, starting with some points about the national public policy, but then just pointing out a few of the sustainability innovations that have come about because of that policy. And so here, the primary focus of these sustainability innovations on this slide are economic. And you can see, again, that kind of crossover in the Venn diagram as here in this economic-related slide, I'm talking about the entrepreneurial ventures of universities and transit operators. And so not only is India investing in the future of their transportation planning industry by identifying these centers for excellence in transportation planning and engineering, but also allowing these universities the freedom to become entrepreneurs themselves. So in the case of the Janmarg system, which is the bus rapid transit system in Ahmedabad, the CEPT University that I just mentioned did not only put together plans for how the system would be built, but also is acting as the prime contractor and ensuring the quality of service and overseeing competitive operators there in the city. In that case, they're trying to limit the number of buses that any operator would have control over to 50. And so right now they have about 250 buses in the system and are utilizing 5 different private operators who have responsibility for everything from scheduling the personnel to also making sure that the rolling stock is maintained. And the CEPT University as well is going to be in charge of the design and development and even potentially operation of up to 6 or 7 new BRT systems elsewhere in India. So it's a pretty exciting kind of entrepreneurial approach with universities. Other sustainability innovations, of course, looking at the environmental side in India, transit corridor improvements, as I said before, being designed to bring benefits to all modes. This is certainly, it crosses over again into various pillars of sustainability, but in the first quarter of bus rapid transit that we saw in Ahmedabad, it took what was effectively, we could look at as a major, it would be the equivalent of a U.S. route, a cross-country route that happened to go through part of the city, and took that entire corridor and redesigned it from the ground up, making sure that there were benefits being felt not only for transit riders who are being able to use the dedicated lanes for bus rapid transit in the middle of the road, but also that drivers were benefiting from new signalization along the road, the provision of bike and pedestrian facilities as well, so that there was support for the BRT-focused construction from users of all different modes. Also in India, a great deal of attention being paid to retrofitting the motive power of buses and auto rickshaws, which are the small little vehicles you see there on the left, which do a lot of the feeder service for Indian properties. Finally, the final slide on India, just talking about some of the societal sustainability factors in this case. They're incrementally instituting BRT elements, especially the high-tech elements, with a sense that some of the existing public transportation riders may feel that the public transportation system is inaccessible to them, if it becomes too fancy, if you will, with too many electronic features in terms of fare collection. Even air conditioning, oddly enough, was not introduced until a couple of years after the system started operating, to make sure that there was no sense that public transportation was meant to be something that would gentrify communities and become inaccessible to folks that were living in them. Moving on to China then. China, since the early 1990s, has benefited from an improved policy framework and increased investment in public transportation, which has resulted in rising ridership levels. During the first phase of this reform, the focus was more on reducing costs and improving efficiencies of operations for existing systems and organizations, and trying to gradually institute fare increases. But in the second phase, the focus shifted to more of the underlying organizational structure, with some moves to privatization or spinning off independent transit agencies, and the use of joint ventures for bus and rail line franchises. Indeed, a similar statement was made in China by the Ministry of Construction on the priority development of urban public transport, again bringing that federal voice to say that public transportation is a priority in urban development. It matters to economic sustainability. Saying to metropolitan areas that it should use public transport, high capacity and low cost advantage to ensuring economic sustainability. But at the same time, it's interesting that China has a very vibrant automobile industry, and all of the purchases of automobiles is also helping move along their economic engine. And so the concept is, fine, buy a car if you would like, but number one, pay the real cost of the automobile to the environment, and number two, keep the car at home and use it on the weekends for pleasure ride, or use it for short trips that you may need to go to the grocery store. Certainly don't use it for your regular trips during the day. So other public policy statements on urban public transport in China are shown here. These really focusing on, in this case, environmental sustainability, with metropolitan non-single occupant mode share goals being set at over 50%. In many of the major cities around the country. In Guangzhou, where we first visited, they have a new mode share goal for non-SOV of 70% in their new 5-year plan, and also substantial investment in pilot programs for next-generation motive power development. We'll hear more about that in a little bit. You can see here pictures of a new bike share system in Hangzhou, as well as the busway system in Hangzhou. Real focus here, these couple of bullets talk about the societal sustainability in China, making sure that public transport is seen as fundamental by municipal and regional governments and closely related to productivity and quality of life, but also always thinking about what those last mile access options are for public transportation. Actually, that picture there on the left is from Guangzhou. The bike share systems are multiplying rapidly throughout China. But they expect those bikes to generally be used for trips of just less than a mile, and they actually price the bikes in such a way that encourages rapid turnover. And last 3 slides that I have, just talking about some specific sustainability innovations then in China. And in this case, we'll talk first about some of the environmental innovations. I was talking before about making sure that residents pay the full cost of their car ownership. This isn't happening everywhere in China, but Shanghai is actually leading the pack, where they are actually auctioning off registrations for automobiles to the point where the cost of purchasing a registration for an automobile is more than the capital cost of purchasing the car now, which is pretty exciting. In Guangzhou, an amazing BRT system, which we'll hear more about in a couple of minutes, where they're implementing a direct service model where I think about 70 different bus routes are being fed into one single spine of a bus rapid transit corridor, supporting very dense development in one of their 3 new downtown areas. And finally, the social sustainability innovations, again, of having taxis and bicycles always viewed as an integral part of the public transportation network, really promoting healthy transportation, but always making sure that there is an option to go that last mile or even use taxis in a case where you may need to take a very quick trip. Again, making sure that people don't have to use their cars if they don't have to.
Thank you very much, Clinton. Our next presenter will be Heather Ferguson, General Manager of Scheduling at the Chicago Transit Authority. Heather oversees the development and production of schedules for 140 bus routes, 8 rail lines, as well as the daily work assignment for more than 5,000 operators for the Chicago Transit Authority, the nation's second largest public transit system. A key initiative of the scheduling department has been the updating of running times using real-time travel data on the bus and rail network, resulting in improved on-time performance and reduction of bus bunching. Heather holds a master's degree in public policy from the Harris School of Public Policy at the University of Chicago.
Thank you, Judy. Today I will be talking about sustainable transit innovations in 5 cities that we visited. The first city we'll be discussing is Ahmedabad, India. Ahmedabad is a city that is rapidly growing. It has a population of over 5 million and continues to grow in overall size, but also geographical area. The city has a very strong manufacturing base in textiles, and that contributed to being one of the 4th most polluted cities in 2001. As a result of this growing congestion and pollution, in 2007, the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation committed to developing the first bus rapid transit system. The goal of the BRT system was to increase the share of public transit users in the city while minimizing the social and environmental impact. It was very important that the BRT system distinguish itself from the existing bus service and provide an attractive option for people with increasing level of incomes. 2-wheel motorbikes were the primary mode of travel, followed by one of the 50,000 auto rickshaws that Clinton had showed. The traditional bus service in Ahmedabad operated with a very old bus fleet that was prone to with frequent breakdowns. The cities operated on shared roads that were highly congested and clogged with other vehicles and even animal-drawn carts. Just adding more buses to this clogged system was seen as an unsustainable solution, since it would only lead to more congestion, slower operating travel times, and higher costs. Finally, the traditional bus service was actually unsafe, with some buses not even stopping for customers who were boarding. The buses would just roll by, and passengers would have to leap on and off. As a contrast, the BRT system, called Janmarg People's Way, started out with a brand new bus fleet, and it was designed for passenger comfort and equipped with the latest technology, including GPS. The roadway itself also was a complete transformation. It included segregated bus-only lanes in the median of the road. In some areas, there were flyovers for automobiles and new pedestrian and bicycle lanes. Unlike traditional city bus service, the BRT system included stations that were located in the center median of the road and also provided protection from sun and rain during the rainy season, and provided a safe way for passengers to board buses because they were at grade. The stations were level with the new buses. The name of the BRT system was really important, meaning it was Janmarg meets People's Way, which meant it was accessible for everybody in the city, including the low-income residents. Some of the sustainable innovations was the ability to create a new route design that wasn't being served in its existing bus service. The new BRT system was a new alignment that was on a ring road that connected 2 busy areas of the city. It was a result of a very extensive origin-destination process to understand where people were living and going. As a result, over a third of the population was served by the first phase of the BRT network, which started in 2010 and totals 36 miles. The lesson learned is that the choice of the BRT corridor is very critical to its success. Planners were very deliberate in choosing a corridor that was very busy but not the most congested, because it was very important that the first introduction of BRT in their city was successful. And the initial data showed that 27% of riders migrated from private vehicles, which was the exact intent of the BRT system, which is to grow the market share of public transit. Finally, Ahmedabad was the first city to use private contractors to operate their BRT system using a competitive bidding process and also monitoring the performance and reimbursing them based on ridership.
The next city I'll discuss is Guangzhou, China, which is a very large industrial city with a population of 12 million, which is actually growing and is considered one of the fastest growing cities in China and even the world. As mentioned, it was a lot of high density commercial and residential development that were creating gridlock conditions on their streets. And as you can see in the photo, we have buses that were actually competing with each other for curb space and basically clogging one another and also the roads. Even though Guangzhou had a metro system, they found that the demand for the bus service and the central business district was great, which led them to embark on a very dramatic transformation of its key corridor, east-west corridor, serving the downtown area. The first BRT network that was put in operation in 2010 included a total of 22.5 kilometers or 14 miles of exclusive BRT lanes located in the middle of the right-of-way. And it's understatement to say there was a transformation. It was a complete restructuring of the entire roadway, which basically impacted all modes of traffic. It separated buses from autos, but also provided safe modes of travel for bike riders and even pedestrians to access the BRT system. The biggest innovation is the BRT-only lanes in the center of the roadway, which increased the speed and also improved the operational costs. Guangzhou's BRT system basically operates as a surface-level metro, which takes basically the best qualities that metro has with the best qualities of the bus system. During the busiest period of time, there's up to 350 buses per hour, which is a frequency of almost a bus every 10 seconds. The ridership is over 800,000 people a day, which is actually higher than most subway lines in China. The stations are also the longest BRT stations in the world, which can accommodate up to 9 buses and accommodate the strong demand during peak periods. And as Clinton mentioned, the BRT route design was a direct service model, which meant that there were local bus routes that fed directly into the BRT network. This basically provided a one-seat ride for customers and provided direct service into the high-density commercial corridor, preventing the need for transfers and additional congestion. Guangzhou is considered an example of a sustainable BRT system for many reasons. One of them is that they were the first in the world to actually have a direct transfer tunnel to metro, providing a really seamless integrated transit experience for customers. It was also the first BRT system to incorporate bicycle parking and bike share in its station design, and also included a smart card that could be used on BRT, metro taxis, or bike share. The next city I'll be discussing is Delhi. Delhi is a very large city that's 16 million, and it continues to grow in both geographic area in terms of sprawl. It's expected to continue growing to up to 20 million in the next decade. The city has faced acute congestion in recent decades due to the growing population and growing income levels. They also have a very high traffic accident rate, which was quite alarming to city planners. As a result of this severe congestion, the Delhi planned first metro that opened in 2005. It was a result of a very comprehensive effort to deal with severe congestion that would provide a fast, reliable, and safe transit system for commuters. Currently, the metro has over 130 miles of operation with 6 lines, and they are planning to expand it more to 90 more lines in the next phase. Delhi Metro is run by the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation, which is an organization that has characterized itself by being a very highly disciplined work culture that was able to construct the metro on time and within budget, and also operate a very high-quality product. They measure the punctuality of providing service within 60 seconds of the schedule and achieve nearly 100% on-time performance. The rail cars are all modern. They include the latest signaling and air conditioning, and they also operate a bus feeder system into the metro as they continue to expand their metro system. The disciplined culture of the Delhi Metro has even filtered down to customers, and it's highly unusual, but customers actually queue in straight lines for trains, and so that allows for very quick boarding and alighting. The sustainability of the Delhi Metro is that it's the first metro system in the world to earn carbon credits through the UN Framework for Convention on Climate Change, and these credits were based on achieving energy savings through regenerative braking on its rail cars, and also by achieving a modal shift by allowing people to transfer to the metro from private autos. The Delhi metro system is also considered financially sustainable, with approximately 20% of its annual revenue from non-fare sources. Delhi Metro retains about a quarter to a third of its right-of-way for commercial and residential development, which helps provide additional funding and helps to keep their fares low to keep the system accessible for everybody. Finally, the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation has developed a consulting arm and assists other agencies in India for planning and implementing new metro systems. So it's really considered a model of best practices in India, not only for how to run a transportation agency, but how to manage large-scale construction projects. The next city I'll be talking about is Shanghai. Shanghai is an extremely large city among all the cities we visited that has a population of 20 million. It's served by a very large transportation network that has 17,000 buses. It also includes taxis, ferries, and of course metro rail, and they're all operated as one integrated public transit system. The Shanghai metro system first opened in 1995, but is now the longest metro in the world, and that's due to significant capital investment made by local city planners. It was an investment that was made as much as an economic reason to encourage the ability for people to travel about the city and not be inhibited by severe congestion like was being experienced in Beijing. Shanghai plans to continue growing their system. They plan to double the number of miles and rail lines, 22 lines by 2020. As can be expected, it's a very busy system with over 5 million trips per day. The demand is so high that in some cases the passenger entries have to be restricted based on passenger flow. The control center that Shanghai uses for the metros monitors this congestion based on cameras, and they even provide congestion information to customers. There are just digital displays in the entries of stations that will give you how crowded the trains are in colors of red, yellow, and green. Shanghai also has its own radio station and even a television studio to transmit information in case of disruption. So it's a very large integrated system that even has television screens in its rail cars to be able to give up-to-date information to its customers. As a city, Shanghai has put a lot of resources into promoting sustainable public transit. Their goal is to be able to have every resident access a bus or metro stop within a 5 or 10 minute walk throughout the city. And the overall sustainable goal is to have a transit mode share of at least 50% from the current mode share of about 42%. And as Clint mentioned, part of this sustainable initiative is to restrict the number of private autos through the auctioning of license plates. The final city I'll be talking about is Hangzhou, China. Hangzhou is located about 90 miles away from Shanghai. It's considered a smaller city relative, but it still has a population of 7 million. It's considered a very popular tourist destination and a good place for Shanghai residents to get away from the high-density living. Hangzhou started out its bike share program in May 2008 with 61 stations and 2,800 bicycles. It is now considered the bike sharing capital of the world. They had up to 2,400 bike stations and 60,000 bicycles by the time we visited. In 2010, there were 75 million bicycle trips taken by the bicycle share program, and they plan to continue expanding the program to 175,000 vehicles. A key component of the success of the bike share program in Hangzhou is its accessibility. You can't walk more than 1 or 2 blocks without finding a bike station. Hangzhou has also encouraged bicycle riding by developing a very extensive network of bike lanes that are segregated from traffic, which has attracted a new market of cycling. Of the bike share program, about 40% of the bikes are used for commuting, 40% feeds into the bus network, and about 10% is used for exercise and recreation. The sustainability innovations of the bicycle share program in Hangzhou is that it actually has a modern control center which is set up just to handle the bike share program. It's about as modern as any other control centers across the world. Customers are able to directly contact customer service agents through televisions and be assisted that way remotely, but there's also station attendants there as well. In some cases, the volume is so high for certain stations that attendants have to reallocate bikes. Another innovation is that people can to access the bike share program with the same smart card as the buses, they could even use the same card for parking and taxis. And perhaps the most sustainable feature is that the first hour of the bike share is free. And this is to encourage people to take the bikes for the short trip for its last mile to home and work. And as a final summary, Hangzhou is really considered a model for sustainable transit for the rest of China, which has really seen a drop in bicycle ridership in recent decades as people have had growing incomes. So China is now really putting a lot of resources into re-promoting bicycle riding through bike-only lanes, bike shares, and really try to have bike share be an integral part of the public transit network.
Our last presenter will be Mariate Echeverri, Transportation Planning Manager for the City of Asheville. Mariate holds a master's degree in urban transportation from the University of Brasilia, Brazil, and a bachelor's degree in architecture from the University Simón Bolívar, Venezuela. She has more than 20 years' experience in developing and implementing innovative transportation strategies focused on land use and multimodal transportation systems, including transit, bicycle, and pedestrian systems. In Asheville, she has been focused on creating a multimodal transportation network by modernizing the transit system and expanding the bicycle, pedestrian, and greenway infrastructure.
Thank you, Judy. So one question that comes to mind when we look at all these wonderful experiences is what can be applied here in our communities. And the first thing that popped in my mind was shifting the planning paradigm. We see that in all these places, public transportation has been made a priority, and in order to do this, they have created a culture of using public transit through infrastructure and policy making, and also use alternative technology. And they have provided, planned, and built infrastructure necessary to make public transportation a viable alternative and turn public transportation an element to spur productivity. Regarding policy making, as Clinton mentioned, the policies permeate from the top to the bottom. The central government in both India and China is sensitive to the urban challenges the car has brought with all the rapid development and rapid growth. And the first response to this rapid growth was to build roadways, but soon they found that themselves fighting with congestion and with pollution when they began building all these highways. So another element that came in place was focusing on people's mobility instead of focusing on private vehicles and mobility for private vehicles. And to do this, they have diversified the mobility options in order to reduce inequalities, and they have reverted the trend of building roads to accommodate private cars and focus on offering different alternatives to move around. Each city has responded to their own challenges, so we cannot say that every single system can be applied in every single other city. They have looked at their realities, and they have chosen what responds to the challenges through BRTs, metro systems, bike share programs. And the way how this happens is usually gradually. Some places begin setting the basic system, like in Ahmedabad, they began setting the BRT that will support the development of all the other systems. And Hangzhou give us a different perspective because they began with the non-motorized alternative first, and in order to fit what is the bigger system, providing bike sharing all over the city. They also have focused on providing quality service, and things that for us are very common, like air conditioning, are very rare in India or China. And these things have changed the approach to the public transportation system, because people feel more comfortable. They feel that they are considered part of the planning, and even in some places, people pay higher fares to ride in these buses with air conditioning. They also provide bus stops that are adequate to the demand. For the BRTs, they provide these long platforms that can hold all these people. They are accessible and they are very pleasant to be in. And wayfinding systems like this one in the slide that are very easy to understand and very appealing. This one is in Guangzhou and it's a 3D of the metro station, and you can locate yourself very easily in that picture. Also with the integrated fare systems and the platform boarding systems where you pay your fare before you board the bus, all these things have made the quality of service much better. In this slide, this is in Guangzhou. You can see one person with this sign, it's a kind of thumbs up, reminding people that they need to be cordial and friendly and that the system is for everybody. The second element is using transportation as a planning instrument to guide development. In all the cities we visit, the transportation planning decision-making is integrated with land use. For instance, in Ahmedabad, they created the BRT corridor, taking into consideration the uses around, the potential development, and also the areas to be served. And one fact that is very important is that they are using a local consultant through the university, and they have the know-how. They know the dynamics of the city, and they can understand better how the dynamics of the BRT can mix with the urban planning. In this slide, you can see, for instance, this is the layout of the BRT, and it responds to the characteristics of the city, which is mostly a radial development, and it connects important areas to activity hubs. The other element is that BRTs and metros are connected to the master planning process. In India, the central government provides more opportunities for funding when the transportation projects are part of the city's master plan. So the transportation agency needs to begin very early in the process and make sure that all these transportation projects are in the city's strategic plan to be able to access for funding. These public transportation networks focus on connecting major activity hubs, including residential and business areas. So they not only provide mobility along the corridor, but bring people to these hubs. In the Guangzhou's BRT, one of the most important features is that the BRT connects dense neighborhoods to the new business center. So this new land use is supported and creates vibrant areas and well-used space. And then the transportation-oriented development and corridor development are a priority. So transportation-oriented development is mostly associated with the metro, while the corridor development is associated to BRT. In Ahmedabad and Guangzhou, for instance, the BRT promotes the corridor development, increasing the density along and near the corridor. And this density decreases when the users move away from the corridor. In this picture here, you can see this is one of the stations of the Guangzhou BRT, and all along you have bus lane, and behind you have all the commercial uses, and then all the residential uses that will support this line. Another element is the creation of multimodal systems, and if there is something that we can replicate in our communities is the multi-array of mobility options. It really, all the options that they provide really target the reduction in inequalities and addressing all these social issues and making sure that people will have each and all the opportunities to move around. So you can see, for instance, in Ahmedabad that the bike lane is associated with the BRT platform. There is a crosswalk, and so you can do your trip using the BRT and then jump into the bike. In India, in Delhi, the metro station is very well designed, and when you leave the metro station, you have all these rickshaws that work as taxis, and they are very convenient for people to finalize their trips. In Guangzhou, they provide this kind of accessible way to move your bike up and down. This is an example of a greenway in Guangzhou that was built underneath the highway, and it provides space for pedestrians and bicycles to go in this dense residential neighborhood that ends in the center of the business district, and in a very big plaza where people can enjoy, and pedestrians have the specific space for themselves and separated from the vehicles. In this picture, we can see how the BRT in Guangzhou has the platform and then all the pedestrian features. The platform is segregated from the travel lanes to ensure safety, and then you have all these features, the pedestrian feature and the overpass so the pedestrians don't interfere with vehicles and make it safer. Some of these overpass have mechanical staircase, electric staircase, and there are bike share features underneath, so people can either walk or take a bike when they finish their trip with the bus. This is a metro station in Guangzhou that has a bike parking. And this is the bike sharing program in Hangzhou, which we have already talked about. And this is an example of the Shanghai, one of the overpasses that allows pedestrians to go over and don't interfere with the traffic. The next element is using technology to address air quality problems. In Delhi, in India, there was, for instance, a big conversion in 2002. It was a court order to convert all the buses, rickshaws, and taxis to CNG, and they were converted by 2002. The government had to provide subsidies in order to do to be able to do this. In, for instance, in Ahmedabad, there was a fleet modernization. So all the rickshaws that were registered before 1991 were taken off the road. Ahmedabad has about 50,000 rickshaws, and they operate in diesel and kerosene. So it was very important to modernize the fleet to be able to reduce some of the pollution challenges. And also the incorporation of the BRT and the CNG buses have helped reducing the pollution levels. In Guangzhou, they have the largest fleet of liquefied petroleum gas. About 8,000 buses and 15,000 taxis operate in auto gas, as they call it. And it's growing. The government provides incentives and talks about the advantages of using clean fuel and the advantages to the environment. And finally, in Shanghai, the development of the supercapacitor. The supercapacitor has been used as a pilot project, and it provides a very quick charge of buses. And one element that I think was very interesting is that the charging occurs at the bus stops, at selected bus stops. So while the riders are boarding and deboarding, the bus deploys this electric system that connects to the wires and gets charged in about 30 seconds. And in China also, through joint ventures, several large cars and bus manufacturers are supplying 100% battery-powered zero-emission vehicles. And the Chinese government has launched a program that is called 10 cities, 1,000 vehicles, to stimulate electric vehicles through program pilots in 10 cities, and this program has been expanded to 25 cities. And finally, even when it sounds redundant, that the best practice is to adopt best practice. This is one of the features that was interesting in all these places. They travel all around the world to look at BRT systems and to look at metro systems and other ways to provide public transportation. And they use the best practices and the things that work and left the things that don't work. Again, they have enacted national policies to support transit, and they have implemented technology-based collection systems. The one that comes to mind is the smart car. It's the most complete. It allows integration between buses, bikes, taxis. It doesn't happen in all the cities, especially in Guangzhou. All these alternatives are linked through the smart car, and you can jump from one to another and use always the same smart car. And the smart cars also can be used for convenience stores, to do groceries. So it's a very convenient tool. And they are making aggressive use of public-private partnerships and using very different models to operate the transit systems, leading the operation of BRTs and creating partnerships with universities and looking for private financing for BRTs are some of the things that come to mind. And finishing the presentation, this is the chart of all the study mission team members. As Kevin mentioned, we all had very different backgrounds. I think one thing that I would like to highlight is that the International Transit Studies Program is for all the cities, all sizes, and all transit systems. We had representatives from King County Metro or Chicago Transit Authority, or from a very small city like Asheville. So it's a very good program to participate in. There are many interesting things that we can learn from these trips. And if you want to get a copy of the report, these 3 links will guide you to the 103 report, and they should be live in your presentation. And I turn the presentation back to Judy.
Thank you very much, Mariate.